Zamorak, especially with some higher enrages, can be a huge pain in the ass to kill. But at lower enrages, he is rather simple and you can get to kills where you don't even have to deal with his mechanic. And with that, welcome back to another video on my channel, and in this video we want to get a look at easy to do with scuffed gear 100 enrage ZAMMY kills to get your first chances on some huge drops, and also to maybe get familiar with the boss fight themselves. As a quick disclaimer, I will not go into detail with the mechanics of the boss, since if we do it like I do in this video, you can even with some scuffed gear skip basically all of his mechanics with ease. So if you are interested in learning the boss with all his mechanics, there are videos out there, for example, recently published from Ryan, the RS guy, where he explains how to do some high enrage kills and goes into every mechanic of the boss. So if this is what you're looking for, then this video here is not the right one for you. But if you want to get your first kill at ZAMMY done and you want to have a easy time there, then this video is definitely for you. So let's quickly look at the boss and look at how he basically functions. Because Zamorak is not your typical boss where you just go into the fight and then basically hammer down on the boss or something, and rather you have to deal with the arena first. Because when you go into his boss arena, you first encounter 6 Zamorak mages. Each one stands before one of the runes and you have to kill each one of them so the boss fight can basically start. And after that, it is a kinda weird boss fight, because as soon as you killed the last mage of Zamorak, the boss fight starts and he is in his gray health area basically. And this means that in this area where he only has this gray health on his health bar right here that you can see in a second, when he is in that phase, he does not attack with any mechanics and just does some basic attacks. And this means that he does some magic attack when he throws with his left hand and some range attacks when he throws with his right hand. You can also see it with the projectiles. If they are like these pointy thingies, it's a ranged attack, and when it's these orb thingies, then it's a maged attack. And basically, when you get him with his gray health pretty low, you then have to stand on a rune, just like I do in the clip right here, and then you have to charge this rune, and as soon as the rune is fully charged, you are basically in the real fight. And you can now deal damage to the boss's real health basically, and you have to get him down to the next threshold that sits at these little pointy thingies that you see at the health bar. And as soon as you reach that point, he will go back into his gray health area and is again not able to do any mechanics. So it is really important to basically charge a rune and then attack the boss with all that you have, so he is not able to do any mechanics at all and you can just simply go back to his gray health area. Okay, we have 6 runes in the arena and you have to charge every one of these, which means that you have to stand on 6 different runes. Every rune has a hex, which buffs the boss, and a edict, which buffs your character. So let's quickly go over them. So let's quickly take a look at what these runes do. The first rune, or the B rune, activates Twin Shot, which basically means that he now deals a auto attack, and after that auto attack he deals 10% per stack again with a second hit splash. So basically you get hit twice per auto attack he does. It's just more damage that you receive. The benefit that you get is that your basic abilities generate more adrenaline, just like Fury of the Small, the archaeology relic. The second rune is Smite. As soon as you have activated this, you have a certain health threshold, and when you reach that threshold you get executed. So basically you have less total health for the rest of the fight. The edict that you get is that your ability cooldowns get reduced by 8%. Then we have the Age, or the third rune, which is a rune where he spawns a Life Weaver and a Protect Mage to basically heal and protect him. So when you activate these runes, you have to deal through the fight a lot with his mages, because when you don't do that, they will protect him, they will heal him, and you are not able to one-shot him to his next phase and stuff. So for me, for example, or in this case, we activate this rune last because it is really annoying. But if you want to deal with those mages, you can also activate it first or earlier. The edict that you get is while standing near a hexed rune, you deal and take 5% more damage. The fourth, or the A rune, is pretty simple. He will now deal 7% damage through any shield effects per stack. So your resonance does not negate the damage to 0. Your reflect is less effective and stuff. So just be aware that as soon as you have activated these runes, your defense abilities are not that strong anymore. The benefit or the edict that you get is after casting an ultimate ability, your next basic attack is buffed. It deals more damage and it will heal you, and this is actually a pretty good thing. The 5th or the V rune activates the Chaos Traps. As soon as you have activated this rune, he will spawn all around the arena some Chaos Traps that when you stand into them or run into them, you get stunned and you get a high damage hit. And he will also spawn a trap on every single rune in the arena. So when you activate this rune pretty early in the fight, you will have to deal with a lot of these traps. So I don't recommend that. For example, in my case, we use this as the second last rune, but technically it's also not a rune that directly buffs the boss. So it can also be a idea to charge this one first, depending on what you like. The buff or the edict that you get is when you are near the Sword of Edict, which is that sword in the middle of the arena, you will get a buff, and when you are near it, you will dealing and taking 5% less damage. So basically the opposite than Inner Chaos with the H rune and the X runes around the arena. And it also gives you a 30-second buff with which it will protect you against the damage and the stun of the Chaos Traps. But this buff will only last 30 seconds and it has a 60% cooldown. So technically, when you don't care about kill times of the boss, you can spawn the Chaos Traps, go into the middle, get that buff, and then you can stand on the next rune and just get rid of the trap and stuff. Is a way to deal with it. I have never done that actually. And then the last but not least rune, the E rune, is pretty simple. As soon as you have activated this, your heal is reduced by 10% per stack. So every heal, this means the heal of the ghost, your food, your defense abilities, all the healing that you get is reduced after you have activated this rune. The buff that you get is while below 60% of your maximum life points, you will deal increased damage. So you deal more damage when you are below 60% health. For our case, just to be clear, we choose the basic route of the boss. So I activate 2, 4, 6, 1, 3, 5 in this order, but technically you can do any order that you like. So if you want experiment with it, I chose this order. I think it's the pretty common order for the boss and it's the one that I am most comfortable with. So yeah. Okay, now before we go into the fight, let's just quickly take a look at the gear that I take with me. And I'm gonna be honest, this gear is actually pretty stuff, and I would not recommend you to start farming Zamorak if your gear looks kinda like this. Because for this skill, I chose that I will not use any best in slot, and I chose that I will not use any perks of invention. So all my gear is not augmented and has no perks on them. And if we take a look at the gear that I wear, it's basically the tier 80 power armor. So not the best right there, but I made the decision that the quest for unlocking this is actually pretty easy. I think tier 90 power armor is way harder, so I choose the tier 80. And for the weapons, I chose to take the tier 90 weapons, simply because the tier 90 weapons are pretty easy to unlock when you go the tank route and stuff, and therefore should be possible for a lot of people to get them. I then have a Scripture of Charts, simply because it is really cheap to get. I think this one costs about 2 or 3 million in the Grand Exchange. I have my normal Death Warden Nexus with runes and ectoplasm. Then I had a Occultist ring, which is, I think, the most expensive gear thing that I have here. It costs 14 mil, which is not a lot, but definitely worth buying if you can. Other options, if you are not able to buy this one, would be a Ring of Vigor if you have not done the Extinction quest line, or also the Sorgoth ring if you have it unlocked. Is the same ring like the Occultist ring, but for souls and not for necrosis stacks and stuff. So there are options. Then as an amulet, I choose the Conjurer's Raising Amulet, which is a pretty cool amulet. Costs less than 300k nowadays, and it just has the bonus effect of your conjurers dealing 5% more damage, which is really convenient. So I specifically chose not to use a Essence of Finality in this fight. And then I had a Defense Cape, simply because I think this perk is the most useful. You get a free sign of life, and I chose not to use a suck cape because not everyone has done suck that will watch this video right here. But yeah, this is basically the gear setup. But obviously, if you want to do Zamorak, I would definitely advise you to have some better gears. So at least tier 90 armor, maybe the tier 95 weapons. Having a Essence of Finality, having a suck cape is definitely highly recommended for this one. And also augmenting your stuff, get some basic perks at least, just to deal some extra damage is definitely something you need. And what I did not use is some pendants powder, which would also be an option if you don't have the Essence of Finality, for example, just to reduce the incoming damage, because you can use your protection prayers. Okay, and if we take a look at the inventory, this is the stuff that I took with me. So as a conjure, I chose a Blood Reaver simply because this one was really convenient because it was healing me, and also the requirement to choose a Blood Reaver is not that high. You need level 73 in summoning. I first wanted to take a Ripper Demon with me, but this is a 96 requirement right there, so I chose the Blood Reaver. Obviously, I put some scrolls in. Then I had a Power Burst of Vitality with me. It's a potion that is really convenient, that can double your life, and we need that in phase 7, but you will see that in a minute. I had a Luck Ring just to increase my luck, but it's definitely not necessary to get a kill done. Some Vulnerability Bombs, always advised at every boss that you do, take them with me. I had a Ring of Death with me, but I did not use it in the fight, so we can, cancel this one out. But if you're able to buy a Ring of Death, which is not that cheap, it's about 40 mil, but it's definitely something that will help you in the last phase if you struggle with it, because you basically get that extra health. Then I had some Restore Flasks. I took a Enhanced Excalibur with me for the heal. I had some Summoning Renewal, a Adrenaline Potion, a Prayer Renewal Potion, and some overloads. Obviously, I had Elder Overloads, but I think if you have a little bit better gear and stuff, there are also normal overloads that will get your kills done. Okay, so this was everything that I had with me, and this is how basically the boss works. So now let's go and see how I was able to get that kill done. Okay, obviously, first of all, you have to deal with the mages of Zamorak, which is the easiest part. Just activate your Mage Prayer and start hitting them, and really activate your Mage Prayer because sometimes they deal some pretty harsh damage. I also choose to use Devotion while I was dealing with them, which was pretty annoying. And after that, you are able to attack the boss. And now I already mentioned, at this point, he only has some gray health. So this means that you first of all just have to look out that you use the correct prayer. So now you can see he switched to range. We have these pointy projectiles. He uses the right hand to throw all that stuff. And then you just have to switch your prayer to the right combat style. This is also something that I use a lot early in the fight. I decided to take down my prayer and use a resonance. So in this case, the hit is harder that I receive, but thanks to resonance healing me, the harder I get hit, I get a bigger heal. So pretty easy to use early on, but obviously later we had it when we looked at the hexes that you activate with the runes. He starts dealing damage through your protective spells, and he also starts reducing your heal. So if you have charged the runes 4 and 6, this is not as efficient as it is before, but at the beginning of the fight, you can easily save some food if you use that trick. Then again, switch to prayer, and now when he gets low, I start going on to the first rune to charge it. And this is basically the most important sequence of the fight ever, because now he is attacking me, and as soon as this rune is fully charged, I have a few seconds to deal out as much damage as possible to basically skip into the next phase. Or in other words, this means that as soon as the rune is charged, I need to deal 60,000 damage as quickly as possible. So now you can see the rune is almost full, it's one game tick away, and I activate my Death Stance, which is the first ability. After that, I spam my Volley of Souls, and then use my Finger of Death 2 times with all the Necrosis decks. And what I like to do is then follow that up with a weapon special attack, because sometimes you don't hit all that much, and the Volley of Souls, Death Skulls, and Necrosis stacks Finger of Death, so 2 Finger of Deaths, is close not enough to do the 60,000 damage. So I use the special attack just to be sure that he gets down into the next phase. And now you can see he is back to his gray health. So he again deals no mechanics, and all I have to do is just pray the right prayer and yeah, basically get his health down. But before we can charge a next rune, there is one more step that we have to do, and this is go into his other realm and kill a Zamorak mage. So what I like to do is I like to get his gray health as low as possible, basically get him to 0 health there. Then I use Bloat on him, which is a damage over time ability, because he is constantly healing up, so when you just leave the area without having some dot damage on him, he can regenerate some health. So I use Bloat on him, then I use the special action button and go into that other realm to deal with the mage. Here you have to switch to Mage Prayer and you have to activate Anticipation of Freedom because this guy will start with a stun. What I then like to do is use my double search, because when I do that my conjures will instantly teleport with me and can start dealing damage to the mage, and then you just have to deal with the mage, which is pretty easy to be honest. And as soon as you have killed the mage, you will teleport out with that special action button again, and now you can start charging your second rune. And then it is all the same. As soon as the rune is fully charged, I use my Death Skulls, use my Volley of Souls, my 2 Finger of Deaths, and a weapon special attack, just to be sure that these 60,000 healths are down. And this is basically the thing that we repeat for all the runes. So again, get him low, use Bloat, get into the other realm, deal with the mage, and as soon as the mage is dead, go back and basically one-shot his HP. What I also tend to do, by the way, is when he heals up a lot, like this one here, he goes back to 10k health, and since I have so much Soscuff gear that it's really hard to deal the 60k damage and stuff, I tend to just step away from the rune just to get sure that he is low with the gray health and then charge it. Technically, you could also directly after hitting him back to gray health go into the other realm and deal with the mage and then deal with the gray health and stuff, but yeah, it's whatever you like, man, you know. Okay, and now again, charging the rune, dealing all my damage with the same combo always: Death Skulls, Volley of Souls, 2 Finger of Deaths, and a weapon spec, and it is basically always enough. What you can see now is that he will start dealing more and more damage, and also what is really important is that my heals will get reduced. So what I start now in these gray health phases is using my defense abilities. Even though these are nerfed thanks to the hexes that we have activated, it is still nice to have them, so I try to use resonance basically as much as it is up and ready. I use reflect and I use debilitate and devotion as much as I can, simply to just reduce his damage that he deals. And now again, dealing with the mage, going back, stepping down from the rune so I can get him low again, and then standing back on the rune and just dealing as much damage as I can in these quick seconds that I have to just face him with a special attack in the end. As you can see here, I for example fucked up a bit because somehow I made some steps and then basically interrupted my damage dealing and stuff. So it was really important that I used my weapon spec, because the damage would not have been enough without it. So just make sure that you can one-shot him, because if you don't one-shot him, he will start doing his mechanics, and they are not the easiest to deal with. And basically when you wrongly deal with them, you will get one-shot by every single one of his mechanics. So yeah, it's definitely advised to not deal with them. Okay, now we come to the rune with the Chaos Trap, and I think this is actually the only one that is a bit different, because as soon as he charged the rune with the Chaos Traps, he starts, or he will create a trap on every single rune, and this means that he also will create a trap on your rune that you are standing in. So what I like to do right here is that as soon as the rune is charged, instead of just dealing my damage, I dive away in that game tick where I activate my Death Skulls, so I don't get hit by this Chaos Trap that he spawns right here. And it's really important that you do that, because otherwise you will get a lot of mage damage and you will get stunned. And if you get stunned, you most of the times will not have the time to one-shot him back without dealing with his mechanics and stuff. And what is really important, what I had to learn the hard way, is that you dive not too far away from the boss, because when you just dive far away from him, you can lose your death skulls because you're too far away and it cannot bounce. So just be careful that you don't dive too far away. But it's basically exactly that. Just wait until the rune is almost fully charged and then just use your death skulls and a dive ability at the same time basically, and you will have no problem with one-shotting him and not get hit by the trap. But as I already mentioned, he has a trap on every single rune, and there is still one rune left that we have to deal with. And this is actually pretty easy because you just wait until he deals or he attacks with mage again. And as soon as he does that, you use your devotion ability, use anticipation, and just stand on the rune. So the magic damage gets reduced to 0 and you don't get stunned at all. Pretty simple. But just wait until he deals with mage attacks again, because otherwise you have to switch prayer and stuff and it's pretty annoying. Yes, aim them again, get him low, get into the other realm, kill the mage. And now, as soon as you are back in the arena, it is basically easier, because now you can use Invoke Death on him. So he has the death mark on him and he gets one shot at 30,000 health. So you only have to deal with 45,000 health right here. But he also gets the healer and the shielder and stuff because it's rune number 3. But yeah, the process is basically the same. But just be careful, because when you charge the rune, he will spawn a trap again. So use anticipation or dive away again so you don't get stunned by the rune right here. So as you can see, I used anticipation. No, I did not use anticipation here, so I had to use freedom. But then as soon as the rune is charged, you again can just deal the damage to him. And it should definitely be enough when you do the same as we did before to get him into that threshold where he gets executed. And now this is the point where you enter phase 7. And phase 7 is the hardest phase of the whole boss fight, and it's definitely that phase where you can fuck up the most. So, how does this work? It is pretty simple, because in phase 7, you basically again have the other arena that you have to deal with. This is a picture from the PVME website that I use right here just to showcase it to you. And basically what you have in this arena is the boss stands up here, and then you have all his runes again in this arena. So you can see there are 6 runes, and you have to deal with 2 of them again. But basically, the fight in phase 7 functions that he will show you 2 runes, and then you have to go on, kill those 2 runes, and after you killed the 2 runes, you can then again start attacking the boss. Okay, this sounds incredibly complicated, but it is kind of easy when you know what to do. So let me just go to my talk through video and we take a look at it. So basically, when we start into phase 7, what I like to do is I activate my Invoke Death, and then I use a weapon spec on the demon, spawn my conjures, and just take him out like this so I don't have to deal with this guy again, because he can deal some pretty incredible damage. And now I have to wait until Zamorak shows me what runes I have to deal with. And he does that by just dragging them to himself. So I can see now he chose this rune right here and dragged it to his location, and this means I have to kill exactly that rune. And while I am dealing with that rune, he also shows the second one. So I now know that I have to deal with this one and this one. And what I do right now is when I deal with the first rune, I activate my Living Death right here. This is basically my ultimate ability that buffs my death skulls, but also buffs your Finger of Death. This is exactly the reason why I do it. Now I kill the rune and use a Adren potion, so I have full Adren when we then come to the last moment of the fight, and go to the second rune. The second rune, before I kill it, I use my devotion and switch to the melee prayer, because I have to tank 2 heavy melee hits soon. And devotion has an effect that when you kill something while devotion is active, the duration of the spell gets increased. So you can see that I had like, I think, 6 seconds left on the devotion, and as soon as I killed the rune, I had 11 seconds back. Now, when I killed the rune, I can deal damage to the boss. And my goal is to basically one-shot him as fast as I can, because he basically does always the same right here. He will give you 1 big melee attack, then give you a insanely high blast of energy, which is a incredible high damage hit, then he will give you 4 blasts of energy again, which is, but these are lower charged, so about 25 to 50% of the damage that the first one did. Then his cycle basically ends. He spawns a second demon and the whole cycle starts again. So it is really important that you kill him as fast as possible, basically. Because if you don't do that, you will have to deal with this mechanic over and over again. And the first time is pretty easy because we have Devotion, we have the Power Burst of Vitality, we have Reflect and stuff. But if you are not able to one-shot him, you will have to deal with that again without having these abilities ready. And this is exactly the point where you then use your Signs of Life, your Rings of Death, and all that stuff, or you are just a PVM god and deal with it other ways. But yeah, the most simple way is just to kill the boss as fast as possible as soon as you killed the second rune. So as soon as I killed the second rune, I basically charge directly to him and I start attacking him with my Volley of Souls. And really important now is that you don't use your Death Skulls, because when you use your Death Skulls, it will bounce between the boss and the B rune right here. And when you kill the B rune, you will get executed. So when you use Death Skulls, you will kill yourself. So don't use Death Skulls here unless one of the 2 runes that he showed you was the B rune. Because somehow when you killed the B rune already, Death Skulls will then bounce between you and the boss and not between him and the B rune. So it's pretty weird, but if he does not choose the B rune as one of the 2 runes, you are not allowed to use Death Skulls. So I now go to him and use my Volley of Souls. After that, I drink my Power Burst of Vitality and use Reflect to deal with that first blast of energy that is 100% charged. While I did that, I use my Finger of Deaths, which deal increased damage because I'm still in my Living Death. And this, by the way, is that heavy hit, so it's a 9k damage, which is halved by the Reflect ability. So just that you see how much damage he basically deals right here. Now I use a Invoke Death, so I only have to get him to 20,000 health. And then I use a second Finger of Death again, and the fight is over. But if you don't do that right, you will have to deal with a lot more damage. So it is definitely advised to take your times at the runes. Not too much, because he charges them up, as you can see right here. But just look that you have some stacks for your Finger of Death. Look that you have some stacks for your Volley of Souls. Look that you are in your Living Death, so the Finger of Death deals more damage. And then this phase should be no problem. What I, for example, did not use in this last phase, which is a big blunder by me, is I did not use a Vulnerability Bomb, for example, which is something that I could to deal 10% more damage. But as you can see, even with some scuffed gear, it is definitely possible to one-shot him right here. And after you did that and you get that satisfying execution symbol of the boss right here, and this means that you are done with the fight for good. And this basically means that you have successfully killed Zamorak, the Lord of Chaos, at least 100 Enrage. And if you are lucky, just like me, when I first start learning the boss, you will have the moment where you have these green sparkles around yourself. And when this happens, this means that you now have a drop in the chest, which is always such a cool moment when it happens, because you already know it's a drop and you know it can be something between 600 mil and, I don't know, 50 mil. But yeah, I think this is basically it for that guide. I really hope that you guys find it helpful. And if so, please don't forget to leave a like. Consider subscribing if you're new, and enjoy your time at Zamorak. I think he's a really cool boss and he is a lot of fun to kill. And yeah, I will see you in the next time. Have a great day and bye.